Hello and what's up, Exiles, and welcome back to a brand new video. For today we have Hand of Wisdom in action, Chaos Inoculation, Molten Strike Juggernaut. Yes, it is the longest name for a Path of Exile build. So, if you have watched my previous video, you would know that I have been experimenting with Hand of Wisdom in action. As a start, I wanted to innovate with this build and try it for the first time with a Mana Guardian. We ended up with 18,000 energy shield and 30,000 armor at level 90, so it could potentially go above 20,000 energy shield, but I faced the issue of, well, obviously if you have watched the video you will know that the damage wasn't very good, and that was a huge issue because no matter how much defensive layers you have, if you can't kill monsters fast enough, then they will start overwhelming you and deal huge damage to you. So especially in deep delve, because that's what this build is usually made for, right? In areas where you need both good damage and huge survivability, but really not having damage is more important issue to solve than having low armor and or energy shield. So let's start with the primary item of this build. Usually I would go over the passive tree first, but since this build is based around a single weapon, we will go over your items first and then the passive tree. That would make more sense. Now, this build is based around dual wielding Hand of Wisdom in action. This is a very unique weapon in this game, as it doesn't actually require you to explicitly take notes that scales your damage. You mostly have to stack attributes to gain more damage and attack speed, as it adds lightning damage per 10 intelligence and 1% attack speed per 25 dexterity. And it gives you a nice up to 30% increased elemental damage with attacks on each weapon, so that's 60%. And it rolls between 8 to 12% increased dexterity and intelligence, so you get the idea that you need to stack attributes to gain most bang for your buck in this build. Now, best in slot option would be 2 of these with chance to block attack damage while dual wielding, of course. I have 10% here and 6% here. So, you know, just if you want to go super late game with this build and take a corruption on every single unique item, for weapons it will be chance to block attack damage while dual wielding. So, by the way, the build only uses unique items, so I will go over each one of them individually. Next, we go for your ring. As I said, you need attributes, so best in slot option would be dual Lihube of all. This ring gives you up to 30 all attributes, which is the primary reason why I chose to dual wield this ring, dual equip it. Also, it gives you up to 30% increased global damage, since usually this build adds lightning damage to any attack build, and this means that you can use it with like different attack builds, and you know, swapping gems is not really a big issue in this build because you can use it with frost blades. Your damage is coming from the added lightning damage from intelligence, not from scaling the element of the attack. You can also use it with lightning strike, you can use it with molten strike, like any element, it doesn't matter. So the most efficient way to scale the damage of this build is, instead of scaling the damage of a single element, is to scale the damage across the board. So now you can freely swap gems and use it with a fire build, a cold build, a cold scale, or a lightning scale. Doesn't really matter because the damage of this build is dealt from the added damage and attack speed of the weapon. So also now when you are buying your rings, try to capitalize on maxed all attribute roll or near maxed and all elemental resistances. You should at least have 25 or more to all elemental resistances and 25 or more to all attributes. The damage comes last, as this roll, it's the one that increases the price of the ring. Now, a well-rolled ring goes for something between 2 to 5 exalts. Like when I say well-rolled, I mean like all rolls are basically above 27%. So you can also buy one with dual attribute corruption implicit. It will not sit you for too high price because not many people actually buy this ring for some reason. It's an extremely good ring for this build in particular because we are making good use of our attributes. So if you want to buy, as I said, for the super late game, get 2 of these rings, either with absolutely perfect rolls or with the attribute corruption implicit. It should have intelligence because it's the main attribute that adds flat damage to your attacks. And yeah, that's it for rings. Now for amulet, we are going with the industry standard for this build, which is Astromantis. It gives you 100 to all attributes, in addition to being an honest amulet, which means it gives you 16 to all attributes as an implicit. So that's a lot of attributes. Usually it wouldn't be best in slot option because people mostly scale intelligence only, but in this build I have decided to scale both dexterity and strength because I do believe that there is kinda a limit where you start getting less for your passive points if you only invest in a single thing. So, you know, if you want to invest into multiple attributes and try to get good damage out of them instead of only scaling intelligence, then you will end up with even more damage than what you would usually get from only scaling intelligence. So since this one gives us all attributes, it ends up being best in slot option, unless you are getting like literally a mirror tier amulet with like Shaper unique mod, which is 1% increased damage for each 15 points of intelligence, 12% increased attributes, 35 bonus to all attributes, which is the flat bonus, not the percentage. And for prefixes, you have T1 energy shield and T1 added lightning damage to attacks, and the hybrid syndicate craft, which is increased area effect and increased area damage in one mod. Unless you can get something like that, which will it will set you a mirror at least. Unless you can get something like that, then it will be your best in slot option. But why would you do that? It's very expensive. Just get Astromantis. I got this for 1 Exalt, almost perfectly rolled, 1 off. And yeah, that's it for your amulet. Next we have Belt. We go for also generic Cyclopine Coil. This one gives you up to 15% increased attributes and immunity to alignment based which attribute is higher compared to which other attribute. So here's the thing. You can't be shocked if intelligence is higher than dexterity, and that's basically the norm of this build. Your intelligence will be always your highest attribute. So you can't be shocked no matter whatever passive true you go for or whatever variant of this build you go for. You will always can't be shocked. Now you can't be ignited if strength is higher than dexterity, which is quite easy to achieve since Juggernaut starts in an area that has lots of strength. And you can be frozen if dexterity is higher than intelligence, which is something you will never have in this build. But we fixes that with the Ascendancy, you know, the one that makes you can't be stunned and can be chilled, can be slowed, can be frozen. So this build is basically immune to all elemental alignments. So it makes bossing so much easier, as each boss always have a specific element unique to it. Now this build also gives you 1% increased damage per 5 of your lowest attribute. And now this is when I mentioned that you can get more in this build from scaling every single attribute rather than just intelligence. This is what I meant, because our 2 lowest attributes, they're already above 600. So with 1% damage of 5 for each 5 of our lowest attributes, this mod alone gives us over 120% increased damage, which usually if you buy a mirror tier belt, it will not be able to provide you with that much damage, even if it had delve crafts like 30% elemental damage and maybe 30% specific element damage. And then for prefixes you had increased elemental damage with attacks and crafted 20% damage. That all won't be enough to beat this belt. So this is your best in slot option, since we have both our 2 lowest attributes almost equal to each other, above 600. So huge damage boost from this build. And for the late game, get +1 maximum endurance charges corruption. As I said, this build does not scale endurance charges, it only scales attributes. So, you know, having this one is more of a meh, you don't need it. Still, as a Juggernaut, you get free endurance charges. So just makes you tanky overall. Alternatively, you can get one with the attribute corruption implicit, like increased dexterity and intelligence, you know, something like that. Or discipline has increased aura effect if you want to have around 400 increased energy shield. So next we have Shaper's Touch. This one makes intelligence, gives the benefits of intelligence and dexterity. Dexterity is now strength and strength is now intelligence, in addition to the original benefits of the attribute. So basically you double the benefits of your attribute, except for mods that gives you damage based on your attribute. So if this mod now gives us 120% increased damage from our lowest attribute, it will not make it so that now it gives twice as much damage. It doubles the benefit of the attribute, not doubles the attribute itself when another item reads the value of the attribute. So Still all around your best in slot option for nearly every single build that cares about attribute and having extra defensive layer. As I said, strength now gives you mana and energy shield. Energy shield is pretty straightforward, but mana, now we are using memory vault. This one gives you armor equal to your reserved mana, and we almost have 99% of our mana reserved. This means that we have 25,000 armor just like by existing, which is a huge amount of armor in a build that deals this much damage. And with my flasks, I will have around, 45,000. Which means that any hit that deals 4,500 damage to you or lower would deal 0 damage now. Because the primary rule when we talk about armor is that in order to block any amount of damage, you need 10 times the armor. So any hit that would deal 2,500 damage or lower will be completely negated in this build. That's not including also the endurance charges, which applies first before armor. So yeah, we have 5 endurance charges with the corruption. That's exactly 20% fizz damage reduction, in addition to other sources of fizz damage reduction on the tree. We'll get to them in a second. So as I said, Memory Vault as your helm. Try to get one with Regeneration implicit or Molten Strike fires 2 additional projectiles implicit if you want more damage. I went with Life Regen because I really don't have time to farm lab. I just want something quick, and Life Regen is nice on literally any build. So yeah, but this one can be expensive, by the way, because here you are treading on the area of mana guardians, and all of them uses this helm with this corruption implicit as their best corruption implicit possible for helm. It might be even cheaper for you to go for the Molten Strike fires 2 additional projectiles enchant on this helm. Anyway, next we have boots. We have Centric. Centric is your best in slot option. Try to get one with 2% life regen if you have been hit recently. And this boot gives you dex and intelligence and 30% movement speed, in addition to a very nice amount of evasion. Since we have over 2,000 effective attribute that increases evasion, this almost 450 evasion ends up being 4,000 plus evasion. So just a free added extra layer of defense from a single item. And that's pretty much it for your gearing items. For flask, I have Quicksilver flask with immunity to curses, a sulfur flask with increased armor during flask effect, a silver flask for faster mapping, gives you onslaught, and to make it even faster, I have movement speed roll on it. And next I have a granite flask. Since I already have too much armor and too much armor modifiers, why not just push it even more with a granite flask, so you become completely immune to physical damage. I have immunity to bleed on this one. And finally, I have Dying Sun flask. This one is your golden standard for Molten Strike, because it allows it to fire 2 additional projectiles in addition to increased area of effect. Which basically means that your Molten Strike balls will now have the ability to damage enemies further away from it, so they can be now hit by multiple Molten Strike balls. So that's it for your items. It's a really fun build because it's only uses unique items. So if you have no knowledge with crafting, you can still duplicate this build 100%. But you just need to have the 6-link, because you are not running a one-handed 6-link weapon, and your rings. The amulet is core item. Now, usually it takes a while until it starts dropping in leaks, so you will not be able to take this build as your first build. So, also, it's not a cheap build, it's a mediocre build in terms of investment with no corruption. So, I would recommend you to play this build as your second build in League. Okay, now let's talk about your passive tree. As said, we are Juggernaut, primarily for this specific Ascendancy node, which is undeniable. It gives you 1000 accuracy rating flat and 1% increased attack speed per 200 accuracy, in addition to 30% increased accuracy rating if you have dealt at least a crit in the past 8 seconds. Now, right now, while standing over here, I have 8,500 accuracy rating, When I deal a critical strike, I have exactly 1100 accuracy rating, which translates into 55% increased attack speed. In addition to 30% increased damage if you have dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds. Something similar to Elemental Overload, except that the huge amount of attack speed you are getting, since we are stacking all attributes, is like running an extra faster attacks on your main 6 link, so that makes it a 7 link. Also, with that much accuracy rating, you are guaranteed to never miss an attack, so you can still deal a critical strike in this build without taking Resolute Technique. So next we have Unstoppable. This is the node that solves the last issue we had with the elemental alignment, which is freeze and chill. It makes your action speed cannot be modified below base value, so this is basically immune to freeze and chill. And you can't be stunned, and you can't be slowed, you can't be anything. Like, you are literally unstoppable. This is the best mapping node and speed node in the game. Next we have Unflinching. This one gives you free endurance charges if you have been hit recently. Finally we have Unbreakable. This one 2% life regen, 5% reduced damage across the board, and doubles the amount of armor we get from Incandescent Heart, in addition to a life regen over time based on how much physical damage you have prevented recently from hits. Notice that it doesn't say just physical damage, it says from hits. So if you are standing on something like an Eldritch Decay Crown from the Elder spawns, you are not going to start regenerating after a few seconds. You need to be hit from a heavy physical damage to be able to increase your regeneration. But if you are doing a heavy physical damage boss like the Minotaur or Chimera, you will notice that you regenerate faster than a Righteous Fire build, because you are only taking high physical damage over time, and Juggernaut likes to take physical damage because they can regenerate very quickly in a few seconds. Now, by the way, for the order of which you want to take while leveling, take Undeniable first, then take Unstoppable for faster leveling, then take Unbreakable, and finally take Unflinching. Now, we are not scaling endurance charges in this build, as we have already established from our Ascendancy tree. We don't have Unrelenting or Unyielding. These scales off from your endurance charges. If you want to be more tanky, you can drop this and take any of these, depending on if you want more damage or if you want more survivability. But since I do believe that this build, it's already survivable enough with its interaction between Incandescent Heart and Chaos Inoculation, I believe that you don't really need to start scaling off from your endurance charges, especially that other points goes for attributes, and endurance charges, pathing to get endurance charges sometimes is too awkward, because endurance charges exist in a place that has no dexterity or intelligence, and you better just, if you want to be more tanky, just invest your points into stuff that directly scales your energy shield and mana. We do have a Clarity Watcher's Eye mod that gives you energy shield from your mana. So basically mana, now reserved mana is basically armor and energy shield. So that's still better than just like bathing to further away endurance charges. But you can take this because it's happened to be close to us. But really, you are not getting too much benefits out of your endurance charges. This is not something like an endurance charge heavy Righteous Fire build. This is just like a Juggernaut that like to have endurance charges as an extra on the build, not a build that utilizes endurance charges specifically. So passive tree. Now I'm not going to go over the entire tree because I don't want this video to be above 30 minutes. So I will quickly go over the idea of that tree, what stuff you should prioritize on. I will go over important notables and keystones and jewels, and check the link in the description to copy the rest of the tree for yourself. Anyway, we have already established that we need attributes, so you need to path to attribute clusters, the one over here, the one over here, and the one over here, and finally the one at the bottom over here. Mostly prioritize taking intelligence because that's the flat damage. You're getting added lightning damage per 10 intelligence. That's in contrast to 1% attack speed beer 25 dexterity, so intelligence is more efficient to stack than dexterity. And even so, like, if you want to stack dexterity in this build for any reason, dexterity is the other side of the tree, the part that you can't basically reach easily. So you are primarily stacking intelligence and taking strength and dexterity along the way. So most of our intelligence comes from the top side of the tree. But for now, let's talk about nearby nodes. We have take our way here because this node gives you 20 dex and intelligence, and take the route over here, not this one, because basically same thing like with here, but this one gives you attack speed and increased accuracy rating, which translates into even more attack speed from our Ascendancy. Now you would want to take this jewel socket over here so that you can put Wildfire unique jewel on it. You can't be playing Molten Strike without this jewel, and it's almost free. Just make sure that you take the 1% reduced mana reservation from here, because we are running 3 purities and clarity. With this helm, that would be more than 100% of our mana. So if you want to have enough mana to do anything in this build, then you should get the 1% reduced mana reservation on this specific jewel in this specific slot, because it needs to have 40 strength and radius to work. So you won't be able to spend mana for anything without this jewel. You see, I only have 10 mana, even although my maximum mana capacity is almost 5,000. I need this corruption to be able to play this build. So either that or drop one of your purities for a herald, because a herald reserves 10% less mana. Anyway, take your way to Iron Grip. This makes strength bonuses that usually applies only to physical damage, now applies to melee attacks and projectile attacks, and Molten Strike is basically both. Take Soul of Steel for even more armor and survivability, and take the route over here for more armor, movement speed, and resistances. Since we are using too many unique items, you really need to take nods that gives you resistances. With purities, we have around 90 to both cold and lightning, and we are standing at the limit of our fire resistance is equal to our capped fire resistance, which is usually not good. But since I'm using a ruby flask, which is our dying sun, we end up fixing that for now. So taking nodes that gives you elemental resistances, like the one over here, the one over here, and the one, I think that was all. So yeah, taking nodes that gives you elemental resistances is good, because we don't have rare items to get a crazy amount of elemental resistances on them in this build. Finally, take Elemental Overload. This one is pretty straightforward, talked about it a lot. You get 40% more elemental damage if you have dealt a critical strike in the past 8 seconds. I will tell you how we can guarantee a critical strike in this build once I get to our gem links. And for other unique jewels, you have Emperor's Mastery. It gives you up to 7% increased all attributes. So in addition to 5% increased global defenses, which is 5% armor, energy shield, and evasion. So it's an extremely powerful jewel. You should really try to get one. It's expensive because usually it's only rewarded to the fastest Uber lab runner every day, so you will only have to buy it from the fastest Uber lab runner in the league. Usually it's sold in league for, I don't know, 4 to 5 exalts, and in standard up to 7 exalts max roll. So I talked about Watcher's Eye. You should have the Clarity Mana as Energy Shield mod, and for the late game, get the increased Energy Shield recovery rate while affected by Discipline. Just so you will be able to regenerate more efficiently. Since you are an Energy Shield build, you can't run a Life Flask. Alternatively, you can use a Timeless Jewel, the one that converts any keystone in radius to one that allows Life Flasks to add Energy Shield. But you are running a Sulfur Flask, so that regenerates 6% of your maximum energy shield per second. But still, if you really want to be able to sustain damage and still like take damage and deal damage at the same time, instead of having to like take damage then, you know, go away to heal and then come back, then you should try to get the energy shield recovery rate while affected by Discipline mod on your Watcher's Eye as a late game 2 modded Watcher's Eye. So, or alternatively, you can get 2.5% of maximum energy shield regenerated per second while affected by Discipline. And the remainder of your jewels should have double attributes as suffixes and increase attack speed with claws as a prefix. We have Chaos Inoculation, as I have said before, and we take both Trickery and Cold-Hearted Calculations for increased damage and intelligence in the late game. So that's pretty much it for the tree. We stack attributes, armor, and mana and energy shield. Now finally, let's talk about gem links. Our main gem link, we have Molten Strike, Multi-Strike, Elemental Damage with Attacks, Concentrated Effect, Elemental Focus, and Fortify Support. Next, we have an aura setup over here. We got level 4 Enlighten linked with Purity of Lightning, Discipline, and Purity of Ice. On our left weapon, we have a Portal Gem, Clarity, and Blood Rage. We manually activate this because usually against bosses, you don't really need Blood Rage. It just adds more pressure on your life regen. So that extra regen would be more beneficial than just 20% increased attack speed, considering that most bosses does not have adds to kill to give us power charge from Blood Rage. So don't link it with cast when damage taken, because sometimes you would want this to stay disabled while doing bosses. Next, our other weapon will have faster attack support linked with Whirling Blades and Onslaught support. While bossing, you will not have your flasks active all the time, and since we don't have a reliable way to gain Onslaught, I have linked Onslaught with Whirling Blades, so if you cast your movement skill against the boss, you attack him with your movement skill, you have a chance to gain Onslaught when you hit the boss. So that's, you know, a good way to gain Onslaught while bossing. Next, we have in our gloves, we have a cast when damage taken setup, a level 13 cast when damage taken, linked with level 15 summon Lightning Golem, level 17 summon Holy Relic, and level 17 Molten Shell. Molten Shell, the normal version, will be activated from cast when damage taken, but Vol Molten Shell, which will make you completely immune to damage, since we have 25,000 armor, this one you have to activate manually. And I also have Val Discipline, so I have two solutions to stay alive if I happen to take a huge amount of damage in one hit. So that's usually something you won't get with other builds. It's either one or the another, but there's this one, with this build you get both. So get a Val Discipline, not a regular one, and Val Molten Shell. Finally, in order to sustain our crits, we have a 4-link Orb of Storm setup, specifically designed to allow you to help you deal at least a critical strike once almost every 3 seconds, in conjunction with your auto attacks. So Orb of Storms linked with increased critical strike support, Innervate, and Arcane Surge support, because it will allow Arcane Surge buff will allow Orb of Storms to hit more frequently, so that's increased overall chance to deal a critical strike. Now Innervate, while mapping, you would cast it, and you would hope that it would shock and kill the weakest monster in the pack, because when you kill a monster supported by this gem, with a skill supported by this gem, you get Innervate buff, which adds damage equals to almost 2 Heralds of Lightning to your attacks and spells. So that's a good way to gain more damage while mapping. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the entire build. And by the way, we are already level 95. We helped Oak. If you are level 96, I would recommend you to take back the Oak favor and take these 3 instead. They will give you more regen and more armor compared to what Oak gives you. And for level 97, 98, and 99, you just basically take energy shield nodes or just intelligence nodes nearby. And that's it. For the League mechanic, which is Blight League, the one that allows you to allocate a notable with oils, I would highly recommend you take Primal Spirit. This one gives you 20 strength and intelligence and 15% increased mana. This is a very good defensive node to take from the tree, in addition to the nice amount of attributes that it gives you. So alternatively, if you want more attack speed, take Coordination. Although I would still highly recommend you take this one instead. Or just take this node, 30 intelligence. If you want, you know, the most amount of intelligence for your oils, take this one. And that's pretty much it for the entire build. And Pantheons, which is the thing that I almost forgot to talk about, we have the Soul of Lunaris and the Soul of Growthcall. And yeah, that's it. This build is good in Deep Delve, and it's immune to too many things. We're immune to all elemental alignments, we can't be stunned, and we have too much physical mitigation and elemental mitigation, which is usually not something you would have on many builds, just to be able to tank like extremely high amount of damage. Like the effective defensive layer that I would estimate for a build that does not have many of the secondary defensive layers we have here is around 15,000 energy shield. So we are running with 10,000 energy shield. Effectively 15,000 if you are playing with a different character that does not have high armor or immunity to elemental alignments or stuff like that. So don't let looks deceive you, because with less than 10,000 energy shield, you can still do something like Uber Elder easily, as I've shown you at the start of the video. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed this build guide, make sure that you like, subscribe, turn the notification bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. My name is Phoenix, and I will see you all in the next video.